Well, good afternoon and welcome everyone. Jim Brett of the New England Council. It's been a busy week for the New England Council. Today is our third virtual program this week, and we have more planned in the days and the weeks ahead. Next week, Senator Elizabeth Warren will be joining us for a Capitol Hill report on Tuesday. On Thursday, we'll be holding another installment of our Leading in a Crisis series. This time, looking at the banking industry's response to the crisis with leaders from the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston, Eastern Bank, and People's United Bank. The following week, we're looking forward to programs with New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu and Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. We're pleased that you could join us today for our third installment of our Leading in a Crisis series, which was launched earlier this month to highlight how New England Council members across the region are stepping up to the plate and exhibiting tremendous leadership in a time of crisis. In our first two programs, we focused on the direct healthcare response to the virus with leaders from the life sciences and the medical communities. And while the healthcare sector's response to the situation has truly been incredible, today, we're going to shift gears, look at another industry that is absolutely vital, not just to supporting the healthcare industry, but to our economy at the large, and that is the energy industry. So today, we're going to hear from three leaders in the region's energy sector to learn more about how they have literally kept the lights on during this crisis. The hospitals, medical facilities, for other essential businesses, and also for the millions of people who are now working and learning remotely areas. We'll be talking to them about the challenges that this public health crisis has presented to the energy sector and how they have overcome them. So I'm pleased to introduce our three panelists. Joe Dalton, Project Director of ENGIE North America, oversees the medical area total energy plan, MATEP, a microgrid energy system that serves the Longwood medical area. Jim Hunt, Senior Vice President for Regulatory Affairs and Chief Communications Officer at Eversource Energy. Eversource is New England's largest energy provider, serving more than 3.6 million customers here in New England, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. And Marcy Reed, Massachusetts President and Executive Vice President of U.S. Policy and Social Impact at National Grid. Many of you know that National Grid is one of the largest energy providers in the Northeast and serving customers in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and here in New England, as well as in New York State. And I might just add that Marcy will be given a special honor later in the month of June, which will be inducted into the Academy of Distinguished Bostonians, a recognition that is well-deserved, and we congratulate her. But we are honored that all of you could join us today to hear from a very impressive panel of experts. And I want to thank them also for taking the time to join us. With that, I'm just going to start off with a question in particular for Joe. Joe, many of our members know who you are and what ENGIE is about, but they're not familiar with this medical area total energy plant, MATEP. And maybe you can tell us more about exactly what this new plant is all about and how it provides the services.
Sure, Jim. Thank you so much. Thank you to you, Jim, and the council for your own leadership during this time, providing a forum for this exchange of ideas, for the ability to inform and educate not only your members, but members of the New England community writ large on the important activity that's happening throughout the region. I am pleased to be joined together with Marcy and Jim, and congratulations, Marcy, on your upcoming award. So the medical area total energy plant is a facility that is owned by ENGIE North America, and we have a partner, Axiom Infrastructure, out of New York and Montreal. And then ENGIE is the operation and maintenance provider for the facility. The facility provides electricity and heating and cooling for the Harvard Medical School and affiliated hospitals, the Beth Israel Deaconess, Boston Children's, Brigham and Women's, the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and the Joslin Diabetes Center. And so it's a plant that sits, we have generation capability, chilled water capability, the capability to produce steam, and we do that for those customers on a 24/7 basis and providing them safe and reliable service. We do that in conjunction with Jim's company and Marcy's company. Our gas supply comes from National Grid, and we have electricity intersection with Eversource as well. So it's really a collaborative effort. And what we do on an ongoing basis is work with our customers, the hospitals and the Harvard Medical School, to ensure the continuous supply of their energy needs. And really, we are an extension, particularly during this time. I mean, we view ourselves without question as an extension of them, if you will. They are only as reliable as we are reliable. And so it's critically important, and this is true, I think this conversation is going to tee up just how much the system writ large is dependent upon the energy infrastructure that is keeping the lights on, keeping the hospitals up and running, keeping people plugged in and working from home. So all those things are true. But that's essentially the mission of the Maytep facility over in the Longwood area.
Like I said, we have many members of the council have weighed in, asking us to ask the panelists different questions, and time permitting, I'll get to as many as I can. And this is really for all three of you, but social distancing is a new term, and we don't know how long we're going to be having that. I mean, I'm battling it right now with my refrigerator, and unfortunately, the refrigerator is winning out. But we could have this for weeks, months, maybe years. What are your thoughts on how it's going to impact your day-to-day operations?
Yeah, maybe I could jump in, Jim, and again, thank you for having us and our panelists as well. These are two great partners of ours, and I think in times of crisis, we come together as utility and energy leaders because reliable energy really is the foundation of our economy, and never more than now, I think, do our customers and society realize how much we depend on it to keep the hospitals going, like Joe is doing in Maytep and we're doing for our customers, to keep those that are at home remotely learning, keeping them with reliable energy and meeting their needs, and giving them some sense of normalcy. I think on the social distancing side, I'd say that we took quick action as an industry to put in the proper protocols so that we could continue the essential services that we provide as an industry. We worked with the governors in all of our states, with state leaders and communities to continue to get the go-ahead to keep performing the work we need to both keep the lights on, the gas flowing, and for our water customers to have them have safe, healthy water as well for the aquarium customers that we oversee. And it was great collaboration. We also in Washington had the Department of Homeland Security put out some guidance for the states and communities to ensure that critical infrastructure workers can continue to do the work as government kind of tighten the reins on other construction activities. So that was really important. We certainly put in all of the protocols, not only, I don't like to call it social distancing, I'd call it physical distancing, because we need to stay together, communicate and collaborate. So we put in physical distancing measures, as well as armed our employees, who are our most important asset, with the proper training and PPE to ensure that they can perform the essential work that they do.
Marcy?
Yeah, I'll add on to that a little bit. But first, thanks, Jim, for the kind introduction. And it's always good to be sitting next to brothers Hunt and Dalton on the screen. So good to see you guys. Everything that Jim said around physical distancing, I love that, is true for us. The other thing that I think all three of us have done is fairly quickly, for us, it was March 13th, Friday the 13th, we adopted a work from home strategy. So we've got 17,000 employees across 3 states. And fairly immediately, we moved to something between 8 and 10,000 of them working from home, where they are safest right now. And so that was really important as part of the distancing strategy that we all have adopted. I mean, it had the benefit, or it had the impact, I should say. I'm not sure it's a benefit. We temporarily reduced our office footprint from 7.5 million square feet to 1.3 million square feet. So not great if you're in the real estate sector on this call, but you know, we knew it was best just to keep our employees at home. And in our case, we're going to keep them there probably for months to come. But like Jim and probably Joe, all of the physical distancing, whether the key people who are out in the streets, you know, paying attention to our gas and electricity networks, are doing all the right things that you would hope that they would do. We're only going into homes where there's an emergency, and even then there's a strict protocol on how to do that. So, you know, I'm comfortable with the way we're working right now, and we're getting the job done. We haven't actually seen a blip.
Jim, may I just add, and I thank Marcy and Jim for their comments. I would say, you know, as an industry, safety really is the #1 priority for our industry and our workforce. And I think physical distancing, social distancing, that's just an extension. It's another sensible, necessary safety precaution. And so I think particularly as our folks are in, you know, perhaps riskier environments or close quarters, certainly across the industry, I think that's, you know, for us to internalize that, it's really just another piece of the safety approach that I think as an industry we take to these issues. So in all likelihood, these distancing rules are in place and will stay that way. And I think that's kind of welcome for our workforce and the customers we serve, because it's just an extension of the safety mindset that I think our industry brings to the job every day.
I mean, all three of you talk about your workforce now working remotely, but what has the impact been on your organization overall in terms of productivity and collaboration?
I think Marcy, you know, hit on it. I think we're used to working on emergencies. We are an industry that actually has a pandemic plan, and here in the Northeast, we get the hurricane seasons and summer thunderstorms. So our workforce is used to rushing in to help support and adapt to whatever conditions we need to adapt to. So we were able to stand up, similar to National Grid, our remote workforce pretty quickly. About 50% of our workforce, within a matter of a few days, we stood up to be able to work remotely. Think of our call center. Think of your typical call center. We moved a 500-person call center in 5 days to be able to take calls from their homes. Pretty remarkable. On other areas that we've seen, you know, I think from a productivity standpoint, we've been very, very well served. Our major projects that are critical for reliability to keep the power flowing, are largely on track. And we, again, worked in close collaboration with government to ensure that. You know, we have, for instance, in the Kendall Square area, a new substation and major transformers that were going into support one of the fastest growing energy areas, not only just in the region, but in the country. Working with the city of Cambridge, working with Governor Baker and his administration, we were able to get the green light to keep projects like that going. Yes, we've curtailed on those customer-facing interactions to ensure proper physical distance, but by and large, our productivity levels have been very, very high.
I will say on the productivity, it's possible that we are even more productive, but I think it comes with a cost. For example, my commute is now about 50 feet, and the company's getting more hours out of me. I thought they got a lot before, but it's, and I worry about that actually, to think of all of our workers we have around the Northeast sitting like I am at a desk in my house, and you know, and so we have to, I think we just need to be aware of that and watch for a little bit of burnout. People are working more hours because they can, and they can't separate home from work. And so I think the answer to your question is we're more productive. I will say, as a couple of the others have mentioned, that there are jobs that simply can't be done from home. However, one of them, like so, control room operators. Jim and I both have large control rooms where they've got these 40 by 10-foot screens like Star Wars, and the only place you can do that job, look at pressures, look at voltages, is sitting there in front of it. In our case, we took a sequestered path. We actually took our 400 some odd employees who do that work, and we split them into 2 teams, and we locked them in there for 4 weeks, haven't been tested, and they're clean. It wasn't the way they envisioned working for a month, but honestly, the morale was high. They knew they were doing a very important role, and the cooks were sequestered. They lived in little RVs, probably a little, it was odd for them, but you take these kind of measures. As Jim mentioned, we all have pandemic plans, and so we have to be prepared for these kinds of things.
And then in your particular company, not only they've been sequestered, you have several other volunteers who are willing to take their place in order for them to go home with their families, which is extraordinary. The morale of your work is that they say, hey, count me in. I'm willing to fill in for, so-and-so's slot there. That's a great example of really a high morale work environment.
That's what you get from all of our companies. I mean, we are a public service type industry. You come to work at one of our companies to serve. And so I wasn't at all surprised by that, Jim.
Yeah, I would just say on that point, and Marcy is exactly right. I mean, I've often marveled that our employees, particularly at Maytap, view themselves almost as not working for Maytap or even the hospitals, but the patients themselves, right? I mean, they just view themselves as an extension of the provider for the customer's customer, if you will. It's extraordinary, their level of commitment, their ingenuity around these things, their patience and perseverance as we stood up the pandemic plan and required the continuity of operations measures that we took place to ensure the consistent, reliable, safe supply. And it's a real credit to the workforce. And I'm proud to be associated with them as a consequence of that.
As I mentioned, that there are certain roles in your companies that simply can't be completed remotely. So it would require certain personnel to be on site at those facilities and in the field. So I think one of the biggest challenges I would think that you would be facing for your employees would be the shortage of the PPEs. Making sure that they have the proper equipment, and how are you addressing that? And also maybe looking forward, are you stockpiling to make sure we have enough of the PPE equipment going forward if we ever had a spike or another wave?
On PPE, of course, early on, there was a mad rush for personal protective equipment. We have our own stockpiles. Again, we're in the emergency response business in many ways. So we had certain safety equipment that we armed our employees with. We certainly ran into shortages and also had some geographic distribution issues, but we're quickly able to gain access through our procurement channels to enough to meet our needs. And then also, we worked with anything that we had in surplus. We didn't stockpile and hoard it. We certainly worked with our governors and others to, when we had surplus, to distribute that. We distributed to hospitals, to community health centers here in the New England region and elsewhere, to those that might need medical gloves, for instance, or surgical masks that we had in surplus. And then our employees, those that were kind of sitting on the sidelines early on, their ingenuity. Up in New Hampshire, we had call center representatives who were making face coverings for our employees and local hospitals. So again, so proud of our workforce for not only stepping up and answering the call for our customers, but also for broader society as well.
Everything he said, it just goes to show how similar we are. Everything that Jim said is how our employees have come together, and we too have made donations to Tufts Medical Center and a couple others where we had the PPE. And of course, if you continue a work from home strategy for months on end, the PPE that we do have through our supply chains can be prioritized to those people who are entering homes or who are out in the street or who are in our control centers now, which we've now stopped sequestering. So what he said.
Mhm.
Yeah, and to those points, I mean, I think there's an element of, learn as you go, certainly, while, as I think Jim and Marcy both mentioned, we all have pandemic plans as an industry. It's important to have. And I think that some of the supply chain issues were universal early on. They ironed themselves out. I think as we plan for, certainly the latter half of this year and into next year, and then for future events, how we manage inventory around those issues will adapt accordingly. Yeah.
So do we have contingency plans in place for this winter, God forbid, we have a resurgence of this virus?
Yeah, I mean, we're constantly planning, and Marcy and I and our leadership all participate on industry calls as well. So we're getting national intelligence in terms of the health side from leading public health experts that are informing us of their observations on the virus. But in terms of contingency plans, we prepare for storms and for other emergencies on a continuous basis. We're so hard hit up here in the Northeast. We're constantly updating our plans and building in additional contingencies. So we have been planning, Jim, for some pretty harsh contingencies right from the outset. Our national experts had told us early on, you should prepare for 40% of your workforce not to be available. Don't depend on what we call mutual aid, where other utilities from other states will come to aid us. Prepare under that scenario that you'll have no mutual aid available. And you should do that for the next 9 to 12 months. So we've been preparing under that very conservative assumption. Thankfully, our workforce, through the protections that we've taken through physical distancing and PPE and all the measures that we've taken, less than 1% of our workforce has gone out sick. So we've taken extra precautions to put anybody that those individuals came into contact with into protective quarantine. But we've been able to keep our workforce largely safe and healthy. And we're not through this. So we are not only envisioning next winter, we're envisioning, throughout the summer into the fall, where we enter storm season in particular, to be prepared for those kinds of contingencies or eventualities.
Yeah, I was really pleased to see that those early projections of 30-40% absenteeism rates never came to pass. I mean, it just goes to show how much we've all collectively learned over the last few months on this journey. But yeah, the systems are designed, and our workforce is working in a way we deal with all sorts of emergencies. Honestly, I worry more about a hurricane coming through on a normal summer day than I do about can we manage the power and gas flows during a pandemic, because clearly we are. But it's, we're companies of first responders, as these guys have noted.
And as with the physical distancing, I think vigilance is the best contingency plan. And to Jim's point, I think this will be, an ongoing process. I think we'll stay vigilant through the summer months and into the fall. And if that vigilance will hopefully pay dividends in terms of low incidence of the workforce, as I think both Marcy and Jim mentioned early. Because we stood up pandemic plans very early on, earlier than, a number of, or let's say, the general economy, perhaps, I think, we had a bit of an early warning system just as institutionally, that's how our industry is. So these measures were in place, late February, early March, and it worked to the benefit and the health of our workforce.
All three of your companies are responsible for providing energy to hospitals and individuals alike. Can you speak to the challenges you have tackled and the changes you had to implement to ensure that energy demand is being met throughout the region. And I know that, in particular, Joe, what you're doing in the Longwood area and the medical corridor is extraordinary. So you might want to expand on what you're doing there. But all three of you have impacted these healthcare facilities. So love to get your thoughts.
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, the biggest piece for us, I mean, these are world-class health institutions. We benefit from their knowledge share, and information is absolutely power. So to the extent that we've been able to coordinate in terms of what their clinical needs are, so that we can adjust to what the implications would be for their energy needs. That's true both as they repurposed, you know, surgical suites to take on additional ICU patients. What are the particular needs of the ICU areas? We talked a little bit about, you know, pushing out considerably more oxygen, as these are all respiratory issues that are manifesting themselves. How do you help with that? How do you maintain the climate in the hospital facilities? And then how do you prepare when they repurpose back to taking on more elective surgeries and ambulatory care? So really a big part of that, we have been having, you know, regular discussions with the customers to kind of have a real sense of what's happening clinically so that we can meet their energy needs to match the clinical needs. And it's, you know, it's a credit to kind of the New England spirit and just the fact, and Jim has alluded to this, Marcy, I mean, this has been a very collaborative process in this region of the country. We respect people's knowledge and admire them for the willingness to share the knowledge freely so that we can come up with the best solutions. And I think in the case of these particular hospitals in the Longwood area, the ability to have those conversations has produced good outcomes.
You know, in hospitals, you go ahead, Marcy.
Sorry, I was gonna say, you know, how your question is sort of how we've adapted, and some of it we've talked about. We've sent thousands of people home. We've got our call center reps answering from their homes and all that kind of stuff. We sequestered our control room people, obviously, but also in both Eversource and National Grid, we took very early steps to pause collections activities, no service disconnects. These are normal things for utilities. You know, sort of the care for our employees. For our customers has been deep, waiving fees, all that kind of stuff, pausing non-essential work, obviously not going into homes. We might get to the point where we're talking about lots of energy efficiency work that both Eversource and National Grid do. Early on, we developed a way to continue to do work for customers to provide energy efficiency services virtually, you know, through FaceTime and other video technologies. That's helped some of our employees continue to do the work that they do, but it certainly has helped our customers, as guess what? They're home more, their energy bills are probably going up. And so it's helpful for them to be able to take advantage of those energy efficiency measures. And then I'd say the other thing that we've done, and I think all three of us have likely done this, but I have a $7 million annual corporate giving budget for the 3 states we serve. And we added $1 million to that early on, giving $2 $500,000 slugs to mostly food organizations, food pantry, whatever, ways to find, you know, help into the hands of those customers, the citizens of the towns we serve who needed it most. So there's been a lot of different things that we've done to adapt. And, you know, again, I'm proud, super proud actually, of the work that Team Grid has done to meet our customers' needs at the same time while we're keeping them and our employees safe.
You know, speaking of demand, conventional wisdom would suggest that the energy demand among businesses in particular have declined over the last few months. Can each of you speak to the trends you have seen from an energy demand perspective, how the change in demand has impacted your business, and perhaps you can elaborate on what you expect to see from a demand perspective that the region, as the regional economy begins to slowly reopen up?
Yeah, from a regional demand, you know, we look to ISO, New England, and Gordon Van Whaley, who I know has been a frequent contributor to New England Council events.
Yep.
Regionally, we've seen what they report about a 4% reduction in demand in the near term. Our own analysis for our system shows about an 8%, and we may not be in the same measure of months. But if you look at where demand, if you look at it more closely with between commercial and industrial and residential, there's a big divergence. Commercial and industrial has really curtailed as big buildings and facilities have shut down operations. Energy intensive businesses, manufacturing and precision manufacturing type businesses have curtailed their activity. The residential side on the other side has gone up. So we're all home, we're working remotely, our kids are schooling, people want to be comfortable in their homes, so energy demand on the residential side has gone slightly up. I think that will recalibrate, at the conclusion of this, the hopeful conclusion of the pandemic, and we'll see kind of a return. There might be slightly less demand given the economic conditions, but we'll look to ISO New England for that kind of forecasting, and we have our own teams looking at that over time.
A question for Jim and Marcy. There are numerous renewable energy projects underway across the country, many right here in New England. And as you are probably aware, many of these projects have in-service dates in order to continue to qualify for the production tax credit and receive continued financing. Given the rapid spread of the virus and resulting disruptions, do you think the government should extend the timeline for these projects?
Well, I think that extending the PTC timeline for large-scale renewable projects would help to afford those stakeholders the certainty they need to secure financing and then enter into long-term purchase power agreements, which even on a good day can take up to 2 years or more. And those already tight timelines could be undone with some of the changes that we're seeing in manufacturing, supply chain, regulatory, you name it. So certainly the outbreak, the COVID outbreak is having an impact on that. And I think, from our perspective, and I know Jim shares this, all of this important development in renewable energy aligns with our ongoing efforts to advance the region's clean energy transition, and which will help not just clean up the environment, but spurs innovation, economic development, helps to lower costs. And so yes, I think the short answer is yes. There could be some work done to help provide them some stabilization.
Yeah, and I would agree and echo that comment. And we've been working with congressional leaders like Richie Neal here from Massachusetts to bring that discussion to Congress, either through an extension of the tax credits or some other flexibility to help these projects. And I'd just say, particularly on offshore wind, where we, Eversource, have partnered with the world-leading company Ørsted, that's now located in North American headquarters here in the Boston area, on projects offshore Massachusetts. This is a whole industry that is about to take off. So from a stimulus standpoint, from an economic development standpoint, putting people to work with good paying jobs. We've worked with the trades, we've worked with ports to reinvigorate port infrastructure with Governor Lamont in Connecticut and the New London State Pier. There's a lot of efforts that have gone into New Bedford. So this industry is on the precipice of really taking off here in the Northeast. And these projects are important to continue to advance them and accelerate them to the extent we can, not only through the tax credits and financing, but also through the regulatory process. All of these projects, whether it's our projects at Eversource or other projects that Avangrid and other developers have, are in the federal BOEM process, the Bureau of Offshore Energy Management. So that process is slugging along through the pandemic as well. So now's the perfect opportunity to bring this industry to fruition, meet our clean energy and greenhouse gas emission reduction goals while creating economic development jobs.
Yeah, and Jim, if I may, just in support of what Jim said, I mean, I think so. While not specific to Maytep, obviously, but ENGIE North America has extensive development projects right now in wind and solar, and like National Grid and EverSource, I mean, we view partnering with our customers toward a zero carbon transition is the right approach and the approach that the future demands. I think to Jim's point, to your specific question, an extension would be helpful. I think, as with everything going on, COVID has had the effect of kind of slowing, steady incremental progress in a number of commercial areas. But more broadly, I think what this has done, without question, is really become almost an accelerant to these climate issues. And I this isn't an original thought, obviously, but a number of folks have commented on this. But I think coming out of this major, global problem, this global pandemic, there's another big global problem that folks are looking to solve, and it involves climate. And I don't think there's any question that our region certainly has been a leader in this regard for a number of years, but this is likely going to be a valuable economic engine that can just kind of sweep across the country and help to further, help get these projects further developed and brought to completion.
Mm-hmm. Along these same lines, are there any other projects or system upgrades at any of your organizations that have been put on hold during this crisis? And if so, what is the longer term impact of these delays?
Well, I would just say from Grid's perspective, we've of course put lots of projects on hold, big and small, but probably no long-term significant impact. Many of them were, particularly in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, starting to basically get back on track. So though there might be some ramp-up delays, I can't actually think of any long-term sustainable issues, Jim.
Yeah, I think one of the issues, Jim, is, while we've been able to work in partnership with government to continue our work and the major projects and our productivity, we do need to recognize that, projects that might be 2 or 3 years down the road are in permitting today, and we're losing some of that momentum, and we're still looking to see how the different states and local communities are going to restart the permitting process or go virtual. And so there is some of that uncertainty in terms of local permitting, and we're working with those permitting agencies to make that happen. Marcy mentioned earlier, I think another area which isn't big infrastructure, but an area that has been pretty much hit pause on is the work in energy efficiency. And this is an amazing story for New England, where we have demonstrated the nation's leading energy efficiency programs in partnership with our states to help our customers save money. So that is an industry that's smaller. It's not big projects. It's an assembly of smaller projects. Another area where we can stimulate the economy, put people back to work, but it does require that customer interaction. We've done some innovation around doing virtual energy audits to keep that going, so that people don't have to come into your home. You can, while you're at home, do a virtual energy audit. On the backside of that, there's a number of energy efficiency measures, from lighting to home modernization to, think about elevator usage now, how that's going to change. And now there's smart systems we can install in those elevators to help reduce power flows and help those customers save money. And then I think about public schools. This has been a challenge. When I used to work for the city of Boston, we did a lot of energy efficiency. We retrofitted all the streetlights. We did the low-hanging fruit, if you will. But getting into those buildings is a challenge because you're interrupting operations. So there's perhaps, as Rahm Emanuel used to say, there's no good crisis should go to waste. There's perhaps some opportunities in energy efficiency in particular to get into those vacant buildings, to help those small business owners, the restaurants, or the public schools, to do those retrofits to help reduce their energy burden, lower their carbon footprint, lower their costs, while at the same time, again, putting people to work.
Let me spend a couple of minutes talking about customers. The economic hardship has reached a new level for many individuals. What problems and solutions have you encountered with ratepayers, whether it be residential customers or perhaps even some small businesses who are struggling over the past few months?
Well, I mentioned earlier that both Eversource and National Grid, as well as honestly most utility companies across America, have been our eyes keenly on the customer. So stopping collections calls, not doing any disconnects, just completely hands off. If you think through that, obviously that has an impact on us financially, but it's the right thing to do. There's no way any of us could at this point in time go into a customer's home and make a decision that would be selfish for us and harm them in a time when none of us have been in a time like this before. And so that, in addition to the corporate donations that I mentioned earlier, and I know Jim has done the same thing, we're all working collaboratively with the regulators, our governor's offices in the states we serve, and working through what will it look like on an ongoing basis, and helping to also communicate with these customers. Some of these people were finding themselves in dire straits, never thought they'd ever find themselves in dire straits. Right. This is a brave new world for them. They don't know what LIHEAP money is. They don't know what programs exist. And so we're trying to be fairly proactive in communicating with customers to let them know, hey, this is how you can get through some of these challenging times.
Yeah, and we've collaborated well with the industry and certainly with National Grid and sharing best practices. And a couple things, certainly we suspended shut-offs, and the other thing we've done is updated our payment plans, to allow people more flexibility over a longer period of time to pay their bill back. And then another area that both Marcy and I have talked about in the past, where that we learned from Patty Poppy in Consumers Energy in Michigan, was, think about our call center. Our business call center has largely been quiet. We're not getting a lot of calls because people are dealing with other priorities. So what we did with our business call center, as I know National Grid has and other utilities, because we did this as a best shared practice across the industry, was we stood up almost a proactive cares triage service for our business customers, where they can call us about their bill. They can call us and we'll inform them about what might be available to them under the CARES Act, both for utility payments, but also small business loans, et cetera. So it's a service that we've provided for our business customers. And then on the residential side, we're doing similar kinds of communications to make sure they know what's available to them.
Marcy, you mentioned the LIHEAP program, the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. Under the CARES Act, there was some money in there for that, and there are people in the community, like the ABCDs of the world, the community, the anti-poverty agency here in Boston, who have said they need a lot more because of the demand that they're receiving. Are you both hearing that from your customers, that they just need more of this LIHEAP funding?
Yeah, clearly they are. There's LIHEAP money every year. 900 million was added in the first act. Yeah, we through our delegation and some of the conversations we've been having, Jim referenced some earlier. We're asking for another 4.3 billion in LIHEAP funding. I can't imagine that that's where it will land, but it's so clear to us that we need to focus, on the pandemic's impacts on these disadvantaged customers and communities, and advocate for these policies. And like I mentioned, some of the people who are now needing this money just don't even know it exists. So, people having to make a choice between energy and other vital services in their life, food, shouldn't be something that they're dealing with in this time.
I mean, this question could be for all three of you, and feel free to to weigh in. But over the past few months, I've read, in particular, Eversource, National Grid have been very vigilant when it comes to informing customers of the word fraud. Can you elaborate on some of the scams? And I've been reading in the newspapers recently more and more of these scams that have been circulating, and what your companies have done to prevent ratepayers from falling victim to these fraud cases.
Sure. Well, we all get the calls on our home phones or our cell phones from numbers that might mask and look like an Eversource or other company number, looking for you to either sign up for a service or to make a payment. And we see this on the business customer side too, particularly small businesses in cities throughout our service territory, where they'll say that, gee, you're in arrears, you've got to make a payment right away. Come meet us in the parking lot with a Visa gift card.
Right.
And that's
Right.
what's happening. So we've partnered across the industry to inform our customers about those scams, and we've partnered with local communities as well to get the word out.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is, we simply won't be calling people demanding payment.
Right.
And Jim's right. The calls come in, it'll say an actual National Grid or Eversource number. It says National Grid. My mom got a call last weekend. But I preach this to her all the time. She
Yeah.
knew better. But she did say to me, Marcy, it really did come from National Grid because it said so on my phone. Ma, just hang up.
Wow.
The other thing that we're alerting customers to right now is the issue of cybersecurity. So we as an industry, we have cybersecurity protections. This is a time of increased activity, and there's a lot of phishing scams that go out there. They're trying to get into our systems through emails to employees, but there's a lot of that activity going on as well, at the residential level with customers or small businesses. So we're also trying to inform them about cybersecurity attempts that seem to be increasing at this vulnerable time.
Jim, I was interested to read that Eversource is offering the virtual home energy assessment during this pandemic to avoid unnecessary contact. Can you tell us more about how it works? And then, Marcy, is this something that National Grid is doing as well?
Sure. So again, I mentioned that we have these nationally recognized energy efficiency programs, but they rely on somebody coming in, doing that health check of your systems, your home heating system, your lighting. So at this time when we can't get in, we've basically developed a program where homeowners or business owners can go in, and we walk them through step by step. Look at your system. What's the vintage? Put in the serial number. What kind of lighting do you have? We look at your energy bill. So with those basic inputs, we're able to get a good benchmark of what services might be available to customers. We talk them through that on an individual basis, and then we get them in line for those kinds of services once we're able to get into the homes and do that weatherization, where there might be insulating an attic, air sealing an area, or doing some of the lighting projects. The other thing we've been able to do in the near term is send them some products, LED light bulbs that can be 60% less energy than a traditional incandescent light bulb. Some smart switches or smart thermostats. There's another program like the Nest thermostat is what I have on my at my home, that you can manage your energy flows through your iPhone, and you can fight with your loved ones, like your kids who keep toggling the system on their own. So those are some of the innovations that we've brought forward in the pandemic and shared those best practices with others.
Yeah, similar. So we've performed almost 1,700 of these virtual audits in the last couple months, and similar, we've sent something like 34,000 pieces of equipment, whether they're bulbs or aerators or shower heads, power strips, all that kind of stuff that are so basic. But again, this is stuff that customers can use to reduce their energy bills. The cheapest kilowatt hour you can consume is the one you never buy in the first place. And so, to the extent we can help them decrease their usage, the other thing too, we talked earlier about economic development and jobs. Jim touched on it when he said that, when it comes time for later, when things, open up a little bit more, some of the observations we've been making through these virtual audits is that they might need weatherization or other types of services that are done in the house. And so that work is in the pipeline now for these small contractors to get back at it and be employed, frankly, to do work. I just in the last 2 months, we've sold about $4 million worth of jobs to customers who will later be serviced through these small contractors. And it's all part of the Mass Save program. If you haven't dialed 1-800-MASS-SAVE, you should, because it's, every single one of us pays a fraction of a penny every month for it. The services are there for every single one of you to take advantage. And if you're home listening to this WebEx now's the time to do it, right? And you can do the virtual audit right there from your iPhone.
Right,
That was
or I would say,
do I have to pay for that? Ed?
yeah. No, but I think this harkens back to an earlier part of the conversation. So again, Engie has services companies. We work with municipalities. We work with small businesses. If your building is not occupied right now, and this is something that you're thinking about doing, this is a great time to do it. I mean, it's a low density environment, and there are a number of programs and projects that could be undertaken. It's certainly, again, I think it's, an igniter for economic activity coming out of this. And it's consistent with your long-term goal, which is to reduce energy usage, which is to reduce your carbon footprint. So I think in that way, we're, again, as a company, Engie is having these conversations just as National Grid and Eversource are, where they're really, talking with the individual customers, thinking through what the long-term strategy is, what the near-term strategy is, how many of these kinds of things can be implemented. And in some respects, again, now is the perfect time to be doing some of those things.
Jim Hunt mentioned about cybersecurity threats. They don't go away. To Marcy and to Joe, are you seeing a spike in this area of cybersecurity during this pandemic era?
The answer is yes, but it's on the margin, Jim. We are intruded, I'll just simply say, numerous times every day. And because of the critical national infrastructure that we all work with, we have deep relationships where these things are dealt with. But yeah, I mean, guess what? In times like this, the good comes out in so many people, but there are always there's out there. So we've seen a bit of an uptick, but nothing that's that we can't handle.
Yeah, and I think that's consistent for us as well. And again, I mean, I think, it goes back to just vigilance. And so it's difficult. I know that, folks, in some respects, this is an added layer of stuff to deal with. And so that element of it is, wears you down without question. And to Marcy's point, if you're a bad guy out there looking to do bad things, then that's a great time to strike. So, I mean, it does require a level of vigilance, but that's the most important. That's the preventive medicine, if you will, for the information technology sector, is just to be mindful of it.
The governors of New England are slowly reopening the economy, phase 1 here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, as well as the other governors in New England. There are some people have suggested we should not fully reopen the economy until universal testing is available. Do any of you agree with that, or do you have other thoughts on it?
And I think we leave it to the public health professionals. We look to the CDC, we look to our state public health expertise, whether that's HHS or DPH. But I think, you use the phrase universal testing, and I think it strikes in me like, what does that really mean? Today, if you take a viral test or another, there's 2 forms of tests, an antibody test, they only tell you, limited amount of data. One might be if you're positive today, that's a yes or no question on the viral test. On the antibody, whether you've been exposed to the virus in the past. If you have a worker that's coming in, it can be misleading information. They're interacting with society when they leave that workplace. So I think there needs to be, and there is, I think, this is where the governors are going in terms of that, the right balance of taking the right precautions, and physical distancing is perhaps, and proper hygiene is perhaps the most important preventative measure that we can take. Some level of testing for those that need it, and continuing to just be vigilant in staying the course around protecting employees and limiting contact with others. The steps that at least for us seem to be working.
Yeah, I mean, we have world-class health care institutions. Some of my customers are world-class. Some of those world-class institutions, the best researchers in the country. We respect the scientific process and knowledge, right? And I think to Jim's point, this is an area where we should trust the experts. It seems like universally our public officials in this region are doing that. They're following the guidance. It's a phased approach. It's a reasonable approach. It's a smart approach. I think our people across the board are patient and perseverant, and again, smart. So if we get some guidance about how to do this in the smartest way possible, generally we're going to have a high level of adoption of that guidance. And I think the issue on testing really is kind of a substitution for confidence, right? I mean, so the more confident people are, is the more they're going to engage on all of these, the more they're going to get out and shop or, participate in the economic resurgence that we do need to happen. But I think along those lines, it's really important that we have the best information so that people can feel good about the decisions they're making to re-engage in economic activity.
The Congress is debating a new round of relief stimulus package. A lot of good things are being talked about in the package, in particular broadband and upgrades and water and water waste, airports, energy systems. Boy, if you could get the ear of Chairman Richie Neal and Speaker Pelosi and Majority Leader McConnell and Senator Schumer, what types of infrastructure upgrades would you like to see undertaken in the foreseeable future that would have a tremendous impact on the New England region?
Well, I'll start. We've mentioned some of this already. Certainly LIHEAP needs to be in this package. There's absolutely zero question that needs to be the case. We've talked about large-scale renewable infrastructure and what can happen there. Not only is it good for the economy, but there's a bunch of jobs that go with that. One thing we haven't talked about here, but I think would be interesting, is all the work around transportation electrification. This is a path we've all been on, and there are benefits to it. Again, not just in environmental benefits, but also economic development benefits. We've spoken about energy efficiency. There's a bunch of stuff there, details in different bills that could be tweaked. Decarbonization of gas, the future of heat. I mean, I think that the list goes on, Jim, and thanks to you and the New England Council and and the teams that we work with, we do have access to those folks, and we've had these conversations with them, and so hopefully they're all ears.
And the one thing I would add to Marcy's excellent list, and I echo her commendation of the council and all the work you do. Resilience, right? I think that both in terms of not only just in terms of climate resilience, but now we have this kind of pandemic resilience, really, right? I mean, it is this notion that how do we continue to operate efficiently, well, productively, in a future where we're not operating quite the same way, right? I think one of the bright spots, and this is an enormously sobering, somber time because of the health consequences, but one of the bright spots has been the performance of the energy industry in this regard. And so how do we build that for the future? And I think you know, organizing around resilience for the long term, embracing innovation, things of that nature is a good way to look at what we do for future infrastructure needs.
And when we think about when we talk about infrastructure, we're generally talking about big projects and shovel ready, and certainly Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, our states, and all the New England states have a lot of backlog of needs. So there's some good dollars that can be put to work. I also think about the clean energy economy, the smaller businesses that could really benefit through block grant type funding. Put some funding in the hands of the governors and in the hands of mayors like Mayor Walsh and Mayor Bronin in Connecticut to put that money to work in their communities in a way that helps local businesses, helps local residents, but also can help those smaller clean energy startups. So whether it's solar or the energy efficiency groups that we've talked through, there's an opportunity here to do some innovative things with some block grant funds as well.
And I know we're running just about a minute over, but my last question really would be for all three of you. Even though we are still in the midst of this crisis, we're really not at the point where we can look back and assess, but what would you say has been the top lessons learned so far?
Yeah, I'd say,
Go ahead, Jim. Want to duke it out?
I think one of the key things has been just the the strength of our employees, how everybody has stepped up. I think we've talked about it here, but it's worth repeating. Our employee base, particularly in this industry, we come to serve our customers. I think in that we've been very much aligned with our with labor leadership. They've been standing hand in hand in making sure that we're responding. So I'll give a shout out to all the labor leaders who have helped work through this as well. The other area that has kind of been new for us, when we implement our pandemic plan, you think about we're always doing response to storms and response to outages. Here, we've been able to keep the power going. It's never really gone out. We've had some storms, we've had some issues that we've had to deal with. So I think the other lesson learned here is the importance of other areas, human resources in particular, and communicating with our employees, communicating with our customers, communicating with business leaders and regulators and policymakers has newfound importance as being kind of the tip of the spear of this response, making sure that we're all connected together through factual, timely information.
Yeah, you said it well, Jim, and we are all connected in this. I mean, it's also striking to me, one of the lessons learned, your question, Jim, is we have a lot of folks at GRID whose family members are healthcare providers. They're right there in the front line working in those hospitals that Joe serves. And so huge shout out to those guys too, the nurses and the docs and the folks who keep those places going. The lesson learned is it's not just about your direct employee, it's the whole community in which we live. So that's it.
And I think one of the other lessons is that we, particularly again in this region, we're innovative, but we're also very collaborative when we really need to be. I was struck at the beginning of this that, we didn't need to necessarily talk to an energy regulator about continuity of operations. We needed to talk to a healthcare regulator. Well, guess what? Our energy regulators helped to open up the conversation with the healthcare regulators so that our workers knew that they were being protected adequately and things of that nature. And so this connectivity, this opportunity for collaboration, it extends to policymakers at the federal, state, and local level. It extends across the ties of our industry and then to the other industries. I mean, energy really makes the economy go. So it was important that we were doing that on behalf of the first responders and the healthcare responders who have done just extraordinary work. But about food supply and, all those supply chain issues and the grocery workers and, certainly our partners up and down. So, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is the fact that we really have come together around these things, and that's important, and it's a hopeful sign for the future, Jim. I think that we just need to recall the fact of this togetherness in terms of how we approach the future. Again, I think it's going to require patience, perseverance, but the fact that we were able to do it here portends big opportunities to do more of that in the future. And that's, so coming out of a difficult time, we're not fully out of it, obviously, but that's a hopeful sign for the future.
Yeah. Well, it's a great way to end on a very hopeful note. I just want to thank all three of you. I just wish the three of you would get along a little better, but hopefully in time you will. But all three of you have been just terrific. You've been for the last hour, I found it extremely informative. I learned an awful lot. But I'm walking away saying the energy sector of New England is in very, very good hands. And I feel very, very secure about the outlook for our energy here in New England because of the three representatives that we have here today. We're blessed to have you. We thank you for your service. We thank you for your leadership. Your leadership is also going beyond what you do in your own work environment. But all three of you are so involved in the community. And three of you should be applauded for the work that you do in the community as well. So we are honored and blessed to have you as friends and supporters of the New England Council. So with that, I thank all of you. I thank all of the New England Council members that participated with good questions. Sean Malone did a great job in preparing all of us and the dialogue today. And Sean should take the weekend off, but that's it, the weekend. And also to remind everyone, Elizabeth Warren, the senator here for the Commonwealth, will be speaking to the New England Council Tuesday afternoon. So we hope that many of you will participate in that. But again, I just want to thank all of you and hope that you have a safe and healthy weekend. And hopefully in very short period, we will see each other in person. And with that, again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.